Back here on HQ, many of us have already had our fantasy drafts, but there are still moves to be made before the season. Waiver wire, top 5 players to add right now, and you see the percentages, and our guys will explain more. Dave Richard, Jamie Eisenberg in Fantasyland.
Thank you, Mr. Chris. You see there are a lot of running backs, and for those of you that are still drafting, those could be considered sleepers. And we're going to talk about some guys that you could be making moves to add if you've already done your draft. But again, if you are still drafting, a lot of drafts going on Tuesday night, Wednesday night, even Thursday afternoon before the kickoff, and maybe even some into the weekend. These are guys you can be looking at with some late round picks because we're using their roster percentage. And
Shout out to my keeper league, which can't get their act together. We're going to be drafting up till kickoff on Thursday. So don't be like my keeper league. Get those drafts moving.
I have 2 slow drafts. One with my 6-year-old who is doing his first draft for the first time, and then one of our office leagues. Hopefully they'll get done before Thursday. Let's talk about some of these guys, Dave, that you could be looking at. We'll start at the quarterback position, and we're going to be doing this a lot throughout the season. This is a little different, just talking about guys to add. We usually have guys to drop and talk about some trades as well. But in terms of the quarterbacks, we don't really want to get into the streaming quarterbacks just yet. But here are the players that you could be looking at from that position if you are trying to maybe get ahead of your league and get that second quarterback on your roster. Will Levis, Deshaun Watson, Baker Mayfield, Geno Smith, and Bo Nix. There are a handful of other guys as well. You can see the full waiver wire story on CBSSports.com. But in terms of Will Levis, Dave, this is a guy we both liked a lot this offseason. And he's going to get DeAndre Hopkins healthy, hopefully, for this matchup against the Bears. The addition of Calvin Ridley, the addition of better offensive linemen, better coaching. Tony Pollard joins the backfield as well. Can Will Levis eventually become a starting quarterback in a 1-quarterback league?
Absolutely within his profile, Jamie, because we know that he is a physical quarterback. What does that mean exactly? Well, not only can he throw like a quarterback does, but he can run a little bit. He is willing to be aggressive at the goal line. He's someone that might plunge for a couple of touchdowns on top of being maybe a quarterback that throws for 4,000 yards and 25 touchdowns. And I like the fact that he's got a better offensive line in front of him. It's certainly going to be coached better than it was last year. And he's also got 2 running backs that can catch the ball out of the backfield. That can pad his stats. The one thing I don't like about Will Levis is his schedule. After Chicago, which is no cakewalk, by the way, he's got the Jets, the Packers, and then the Dolphins, and then a bye. So maybe that game against Miami we could target for him. If you want to speculate on Will Levis, be my guest. But we might not actually be considering him as a starter until week 4 at the absolute earliest.
Then Deshaun Watson, somebody that has had a lot of great fantasy success, but the last couple of years have been disappointing. Had the suspension, had the shoulder injury last year. We know the thing that makes him special is his running ability, and he was on pace for about 500 yards rushing last year. Again, addition into the receiving corps with Jerry Jeudy. When we look at Watson, Dave, again, not someone that we want to look at to start the season with. Tough matchup against Dallas, but again, down the road, could he be one of those number 1 quarterbacks?
I just want to read you his schedule from week 2 through week 5. You tell me which games make you nervous. At Jacksonville?
Nope.
Giants?
Nope.
At the Raiders?
Nope.
At the Commanders?
Nope.
Welcome to a streamer for the early part of the year. I have Jalen Hurts on a bunch of rosters. He's on bye in week 5. Deshaun Watson's who I'm going to make a beeline for. And the best part is he might have been drafted in your league. Someone's going to cut him along the way between weeks 1 through 4. Remember the name Deshaun Watson. Everyone knows who he is. You can pick him up in advance of week 5. Use him as a bye week replacement then. And if he's somehow great, he'll be an every week starter because we know what he's capable of doing.
Yep, and running game could be a little suspect without Nick Chubb back there. Let's go to the running backs now and the guys that you're looking to add. This is my favorite position because a lot of these guys that are available could be huge difference makers. A lot of lottery tickets in this group as well. And so we'll start with the guy at the top, Jaleel McLaughlin. We know what Sean Payton's backfield has been. It's been 2 guys almost all throughout his tenure in New Orleans. He tried it last year with Denver as well, not to the same success. Javonte Williams will be the number 1 guy, but in terms of McLaughlin's value, Dave, could he eventually become that Alvin Kamara, that Darren Sproles, that pass catcher out of the backfield, smaller type of guy that could be a difference maker? We know if he's not going to necessarily be the lead guy, but he could be maybe a flex in deeper leagues.
He would need to get a much bigger target share than what's anticipated for him to begin the year, but it is within his profile that he could do such a thing. He's faster than Javonte Williams, has better hands than Javonte. Both these guys are very good pass catchers. They're going to mix in just fine in Sean Payton's offense. Love the idea of him being at the top of this list to stash and see what happens for the first few weeks of the season. I also love the idea of stashing Bucky Irving. Jordan Mason was on your list. I think those are good calls. See what happens weeks 1 through 3. See if they get in their roles a little bit more than we anticipated. They could end up being big-time fantasy helpers.
We can show the list again after we talk about this one, though. But Samaje Perine joins the Chiefs this last week after being released by the Broncos. And Andy Reid already talking him up. We know that they've tried to use veteran guys before in this type of role. Mostly it's been Jerick McKinnon over the last couple of years. McKinnon not coming back. So Pacheco's going to be the lead guy. But now we may have a traditional third down back. And P. Ryan's been good in this role. Not necessarily a superstar, but good in Cincinnati. He was good at times last year in Denver. Is he going to impact Pacheco in a negative way?
I think he could, but it's not going to be that big of a negative. We remember how McKinnon was last year. They were basically splitting third downs in the playoffs. And Pacheco had the third down red zone role pretty much on lock. It wasn't many plays, Jamie. We're talking about like 2 to 4 plays a game. But Pacheco had them. I still think Pacheco is going to have a career year. I think he's going to really be awesome. P. Ryan will be in on those third and long type plays.
And he's somebody to pick up. He's basically free. So if you had your draft, he was undrafted in the majority of leagues, and now you have the most likely handcuff for the Chiefs because Clyde Edwards-Helaire are going to miss the first 4 games. So Dave mentioned this. Jordan Mason, the backup in San Francisco now with Elijah Mitchell out. Jalen Wright, home run hitting type of player. Could be a difference maker if something happens in the Dolphins' backfield. Tyron Tracy, Marshawn Lloyd, going to be backup rookies on their respective teams. Antonio Gibson, while the Patriots are not going to be the best offense, could be a lottery ticket type of guy in a lower sense, just if something happens to Ramondre Stevenson. A lot of these guys, just great stash candidates to put at the end of your bench. Let's go to the wide receivers now. And again, a couple guys that are going to hopefully be difference makers at some point. The wide receiver list, not as sexy as the running back list, but some guys that may be valuable down the road. One guy, though, that may be valuable right away is Rashid Shaheed because banged up a lot of training camp, going to be the number 2 receiver on an offense for New Orleans that should improve. Dave, do you have any interest in picking up Shaheed right now?
I definitely do, and he's available in about half of CBS Sports leagues. This is a flyer downfield for the New Orleans Saints, and this Saints offense, everybody's sleeping on them. But we've got a new offensive coordinator in Clint Kubiak who's going to bring an offense that Derek Carr is used to, that Derek Carr feels good about, and most importantly, it belongs in the 21st century, whereas the last Saints offense might not have. Olave is going to be the main guy. But who's going to be number 2 in targets there? I think it could be Shaheed. There's been a lot of good buzz about him before he got hurt, and now he's got the opportunity to really play and put up some huge numbers. More of a boom or bust type of wide receiver, but somebody that I would absolutely love to have on my bench in case he hits big against Carolina in week number 1.
I'm glad you brought up second on the team in targets because when we get the tight end list, we're not going to talk about Juwan Johnson, who's my favorite tight end to add. He also could be number 2 on the team in targets. And this, again, this Kubiak offense, we know they're going to create a lot of space. And so you don't have to trust Derek Carr, but you trust Clint Kubiak. And again, I think we'll see this offense evolve a little bit. Olave is somebody we obviously love, third-year breakout candidate at the wide receiver spot, top of your draft. But Shaheed and Juwan Johnson, they're going to compete for that second opportunity in terms of targets, and one of those guys could be difference makers. The Bills pass catchers, Dave, when you look at Curtis Samuel, he's free right now because you mentioned, basically half of our leagues he's available, 49%. We love Khalil Shakir. We love Keon Coleman. Are we forgetting about Samuel just because of the turf toe?
I think there's a little bit of that, but the thing about Samuel is he can line up anywhere. I heard a radio interview where Josh Allen talked about Samuel, and he just said expect him to be all over the place, and that means he's going to play a lot. He can get some carries. We saw him work in this type of offense before where he was getting carries. So this is probably, it's a real close call between him and Shaheed, especially if it's full PPR. I think I'll still take Shaheed because there's so many other mouths to feed as far as wide receivers go. But Samuel is another good get at wide receiver to go and pick up. I like Jalen Polk, who is on the list as well. Could be the number 1 receiver for the Patriots.
Yep, same with DeMario Douglas, Josh Downs, Adonai Mitchell, going to be big factors in the Colts passing game. So we like a lot of these guys. Again, they're basically free. Let's look at the tight end list here. And again, like I said, Juwan Johnson's at the top. But Luke Musgrave, Dave, last year had some big moments. 4 of the 8 games that he played, 10-plus PPR points. Tyler Kraft came in after Musgrave was hurt, and he did some nice things in this Packers offense. A lot of mouths to feed, but can Musgrave be a starting fantasy tight end at some point during the season?
I feel like I need to see it first. There's been a lot of good buzz about Tucker Kraft in Green Bay. I wonder if he ends up being the better tight end for the Packers. But just like Buffalo, a lot of mouths to feed, a lot of targets to go around. It's really tough to trust any Packers tight end.
The Commanders traded Jahan Dotson, and we don't know who's going to be the number 2 receiver behind Terry McLaurin, but these 2 tight ends could be significant factors. Zach Ertz, Ben Sinnott. Which one do you like more for the course of the season?
For the course of the season, that's tougher because I don't know how long Zach Ertz will actually be around this season. But I'm going to say Ertz just because we're taking a tight end to begin the year. And if you're streaming tight ends, I don't mind his matchup against Tampa. I think there's going to be more positive matchups. And the reports out of Washington on Ertz connecting with Jane Daniels, I think he's going to be the number 2 target getter for the Commanders, whereas Sinnott's going to be more in an H-back role. Don't know if he'll develop to be a big-time contributor this year.
See, I'm going to go the opposite route. I don't really want to trust Zach Ertz because I think we'll get basically middling production. But if Sinnott hits, he could be Dalton Kincaid, maybe Sam Laporta, maybe one of these rookie tight ends that stands out and has a big year. So I'd rather stash him on my bench if I don't need somebody. But if I just have to have somebody maybe early in the season, yes, Ertz should get a little bit more opportunities. But Sinnott, if you are stashing tight ends, he's the one to go to. And again, you can check out the full story, waiver wire ads on the site. You can check out our Fantasy Football Today podcast as well. We're helping you dominate your leagues, and we're going 5 days a week, 6 days a week, 7 days a week. We're always on the air. Check us out on YouTube, wherever podcasts are found.